Morning, everyone. This is a song by Ricky Byers. If you're familiar with it, I invite you to sing right from the first note, and if you're just hearing it for the first time, it will become familiar really quickly. We're going to sing Love, Dream, and Live. Oh, let me love in a holy, holy way. Let me love in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me love in a holy, holy way. Let me love in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me love in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me love in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me love in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me love in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me dream in a holy, holy way. Let me dream in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me dream in a holy, holy way. Let me dream in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me dream in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me dream in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me dream in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me dream in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me live in a holy, holy way. Let me live in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me live in a holy, holy way. Let me live in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me live in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me live in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me live in a holy, holy way. Oh, let me live in a holy, holy way. I choose to love in a holy, holy way. Let me love in a holy, holy way. I choose to love in a holy, holy way. Let me love in a holy, holy way.
Well, welcome all on our first day of May. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to all. I'm glad to see all our wonderful faces here and on the gallery. Love it. I'm Chic Welsh-Charrier. I'm honored to be your platform assistant today. And we just heard the prelude by our wonderful friend for many years, Lea Morris, an outstanding musician. Can't wait to hear the rest of your songs today. Thank you, Lea. And I'm very excited to welcome back Reverend E.J. Niles. We're looking forward to your talk this morning. We had a nice chance to chat a little bit this morning before everyone signed in. So yay, thank you for joining us so much. Looking forward to your message as always.
And I would like to do something I don't think I've done with you all before. I'm going to add the lyrics to the chat. I believe, as the composer, that this is a reasonably sing-alongable song. So as it becomes familiar, feel free to just jump in and sing with me. It's inspired by pilgrimage, journey, and migration. Motion forward. On my way, oh, I'm on my way. Many miles I march or fly, nature's call to obey. If I roam or I stand still, I must follow Spirit's will ever on my way. I'm on my way. On my way, oh, I'm on my way. One by one, following the on my way. Oh, I'm on my way. Many miles I march or fly, nature's call to obey. On this road to the promised land, the journey home is who I am, ever on my way. I'm on my way. Let's sing that first one again. On my way. Oh, I'm on my way. Many miles I march or fly, nature's call to obey. If I roam or I stand still, I must follow Spirit's will, ever on my way. Oh, I'm on my way. On my way. Love, guide me on my way.
Good morning. It's so good to be here with you again today. And I'm always so, joyfully reminded that I had chosen this topic that I'm going to speak about today. And I had chosen to start it with the idea of Teilhard de Chardin reminding us that we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And wouldn't you know, when we open the daily word and you've read the daily word, it talks about our spiritual nature. And I always like to remind people when I talk about nature, or what we've all called our human nature. And I remember reading Agatha Christie novels, and she often referred, well, that's just our human nature. And then I came across Clare Graves in Spiral Dynamics, and he said, human nature is not just human nature. Human nature continues to evolve and change as we continue to evolve and change. And that just made so much more sense to me. And many of you know that I refer a lot to Teilhard de Chardin, because the very first time I heard him at Unity of Fairfax, where I discovered Unity at first, I heard Elise Green quote him, and somehow or other, I had never been to Unity before, but I said, I don't know who that was, but I know I want to learn more about him. And so I spent a lot of my time exploring Teilhard de Chardin, and I will quote him quite often. But I will start out talking about the title, and it's what this world's coming to. I was once sitting in a restaurant, waiting outside in an area where we were waiting to be seated, and I overheard a conversation. And one person said to the other person, isn't it awful? All the stuff that's happening to now, all this violence and all this, what's this world coming to? And so I said, what's this world coming to? So first of all, I went back and I said, let's just look at some definitions. What do we mean when we say world? Because we can say we went around the world, and that can mean one thing. But if you look at the definition of world, it is about the earthly state of human existence. So it's about our human journey. And so I said, okay, we can go there. I said, but how do you address something like people who hold on to the idea this is the worst time we've ever been and all the violence and everything? So I sort of zeroed in on this. There are two ways we can look at what this world is coming to. And the first one is taking the long view of history. Because if we look back over history, we're beginning to see things from a thing that it looks like, sometimes it looks like regression, sometimes it looks like it's really going in the wrong direction. But what we learn as we go along is that there is a continuance of things that look like regression. But I used to use this about history. Flaubert, 19th century. His words were, only those who are ignorant of history can slander their own times. So I sort of, modernized it a little bit. And I said, only those who are unaware of our history can speak negatively of our own times. If we are aware to look back over history, this is what we can see. Now, I discovered a book a long time ago by James Dillett Freeman. It was called A Case for Optimism, or The Case for Optimism. And I had a copy of it in my library, and I still have a lot of books that I haven't unpacked because I moved on the 7th of March to a new place right here in Bandon still. But anyway, so I thought I'll go online and see if I can find another copy of that. Well, I took a long time and I finally found one copy, but it was an original copy. And I have it now and I'm treasuring it because it's absolutely wonderful. But one of the things that he did in that book, he went back and said, well, let's look back over history. And he looked back over 200 years, and then he looked back over 50 years, and then he looked back, actually, 1971 when the book was written, which was about 50 years. And he said, oh, well, let's look at a couple of things. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to repeat for you, and I may kind of read it because I don't want to lose anything about it. Actually, he said, life expectancy 200 years ago might have been 35,000 years. 35 years. He said life condition, and it would have been as many years ago that he was looking at it, was 70 years. And now I just happened to look up and say, what do we look at now? And it's 79.80 years is pretty much what they're saying our life expectancy is now. So then he went on and he talked about medicine, and he talked about diseases. And he said, 200 years ago, people died from simple things like malnutrition, not enough. And then he went on to say, and then there was a time when people died of things that we no longer even have to deal with now, diseases we don't have to deal with now. How women died so often in childhood these many, many years ago, and how many children still survive. So all of these things are saying, when we look back over a long view over history, we can continue to see us going forward more and more and more. One of the ones that has become really interesting to me, you may have come across a man named Steven Pinker, who wrote a book, The Better Angels of Our Nature. And he titled his book after Abraham Lincoln's, one of his inaugural speeches after the Civil War, where he said, we cannot live this way anymore. I'm paraphrasing here. We cannot live this way anymore. We have to pay attention to the better angels of our nature. So when Steven Pinker, if you're familiar with him at all, he's a very multiple disciplined, very brilliant man from Harvard. So he created a class at Harvard and he called it The Better Angels of Our Nature. And then he wrote a book, and the book is about that thick because he went back and actually researched with data that we now can get, from archaeology and all of these things that we have available to us now. And he started his book with these words: we are living in the most peaceful time we have ever lived in. And he said, now, if you doubt that, I'm going to give you some facts, some data that show it. Okay. Well, of course, at the time, many, many people, including me at some times, wondered how this could be the very most peaceful we'd ever lived in. And sometimes we sort of longed for this idea that we go back to a time it was more peaceful. But one thing we learned, we can look back over history, but we can never go back over history. And I think Maya Angelou said it well, and I hope I'll be able to quote it as she said it. We cannot unlive history, but we do not have to live it that way again. And so I'm saying, you know, this is all reminding us that even though we are living at a time where in the news, we see all of this about all the violence and all of the things that are going on, I remind myself it's news because it's not the rest of the world. What we're seeing in the news we look at today is the exception. It is not the rule. And so we have to go back and say, you know, how can we look at it differently? So I want to quote you some of the things from Pinker's book because I find it so fascinating, because he gives us some really, really good nature. He said in prehistoric times, and he did this by looking at the number of people who were on the earth and the number of crimes. He was really focusing on violence. So he looked back and he said, in prehistoric times, the rate of death from violent crimes was sometimes as high as 60% of the people died of violent death. He said, now, the average was at about 15% of the average people died of violent crimes. And he said, when we go back through all that time and we get to the 20th century, the rate of people, based on the number of people in the world and the rate of violence in the world, was 3%. 3% of the people in the world today die of violent crimes. And I sometimes remind people who have a particular idea of something they don't like, and they talk about, look at all the people who believe it that way. And then I say, have you numbered the people who don't? And so to reminding ourselves, you know, this is what we are. So I look back and Steven Pinker even included, I really love this, he included the spanking of children as a form of violence. And he did all the little things, you know, for murders and all the terrible things. And he, if you ever have a chance to look at his book or to look at his website and the things that he considered as violence, you know, he was saying, this is not the norm anymore. So I said, okay, is there another way that we can look at this besides looking at history? So I say, looking at history is looking back and reminding us it's not going back. We can't ever go back. And sometimes when people say, oh, if I could only go back. And then we have a way of thinking, if we remember everything that was happening, in my 92 years, I don't ever want to go back to the 40s or the 50s or the 60s, you know, whatever. So we have to remind ourselves of that. So yes, we say we can look back, and we're not going to go back, but there's another way to look at it. We can look up. Now, you may have heard the phrase, two men looked out from prison bars. One saw mud and the other saw stars. And so I laugh when I think of the times of my life when I looked at the mud, when I thought I was stuck in the mud. And then I remember it also. And let me tell you something that has been fascinating me lately. I'm looking at PBS and what is happening with animals. And some of the amazing things we're learning about animals are absolutely wonderful. And sometimes just, you know, I mean, sometimes I look at this little 6.5-pound dog of mine and say, how in the world do you ever just intuit what's going on with me? And some of you have those kind of animals or dogs or whatever. But then I discovered a very interesting thing. I found a program about penguins. And it seems to me, and the number of different penguins living in different parts of the world, there may be 38 penguins. And then I found one in New Zealand. And it's very interesting. The geography, the topography and everything in New Zealand, you know, is not very conducive to some birds, but these particular penguins have learned how to live there. Well, this is what you can see when you go to look at those penguins. They live in this area where there, again, there's not a whole lot of good places to walk around in, but they've found an area that's not too far from the ocean they're going to swim in. And they all congregate there, and they start, and it's kind of damp and moist. And because there's so many of them there, and there's so many of them treading around, pretty soon they're walking in mud. And I thought, isn't that interesting? And so this is what they do. They all walk in the mud for a while, and they get the mud on their feet and up the parts of their legs. And then there happens to be a little freshwater pool, and they can go in this freshwater pool and they can wash the mud off. But the interesting thing about it is that when they wash the mud off, they're washing off that substance which their protection that they needed when they got in the water. So when they get out of the water, they have an area they stand on, and there is a gland at the bottom of their tail that exudes a substance that they can begin to pull up and cover themselves again with their protection. And I said, oh my, how many times have I felt stuck in the mud, lost in the mud, looking at the mud, and I can become aware that I already have within me all the things I need for me to be able to get everything back that I need to keep me on my human journey in this spiritual experience. So I just keep finding little things that remind me how far we have come, where we are now. I look at the movies, and I look at the different literature that's being, and almost anything that's new has within it something that refer to the issues that we are dealing with in this world today. It's very hard to find a newer movie or a newer book that doesn't somehow have something in it about racism, feminism, whatever. It's all coming up in the literature. It's all coming up in the movies. And when we look back over our history, what we see is that's how we've continued to evolve, because yes, we have been in a process of evolvement. And here's something that I use a lot, and you may have heard it a lot, and it is from Carl Sagan. And so I'm going to see if I can repeat it exactly. We are the product of 4.5 billion years of fortuitous, slow biological evolution. There is no reason to think that the evolutionary process has stopped. In fact, we have gone from biological evolution to cultural evolution to intellectual evolution to spiritual evolution. And he says there are no reason to think the evolutionary process has stopped. He says, we are irrevocably, never can go back, irrevocably, I believe he said, on a pathway that will take us to the stars. Well, what does it mean to take us to the stars? Well, I go back to Teilhard de Chardin. We are not human beings having spiritual experiences, seeking all the time to be in this place. We just have one spiritual experience after another, unless we remember in the Bible, the fruits of the Spirit are love and joy and peace, and spirituality may not just be about some place where we, all are in this high spiritual place where we forget that as humans, we are already spiritual, okay? And I have a quote from the Bible. It's from 1 John, a book that was written probably about 50 years, probably maybe a little more after Jesus was crucified. And it said, beloved, we are God's children now, but it does not yet appear what we shall be, but it shall be revealed that when it is revealed, we shall see him as he is. And of course, that particular writer writing in that particular time, his perception of it was that it was about seeing Jesus as he was, as the Christ and all that. But we can continue to see us as spiritual beings. We can stand and can see that. And we do not have it revealed yet. I love a song, and I think it's from something called Devotion, and it has a piece in it that says, we must stay in a place of not knowing what is next and being aware that it will be revealed to us. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to quote Teilhard de Chardin again. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And our human experience sometimes puts us in a place where we doubt, we will get fearful, when we feel like we're stuck. And we can say, as a human being, I am a spiritual being having a human experience. And sometimes I have to admit that I find myself getting back in the old wheel thinking, oh, well, that was just my ego. That was just my human experience, and realize that our human experience has continued to allow us to become more and more and more aware. And I'm going to repeat to you a poem that I've done before because I use it often. James Dillard Freeman again. By looking at an acorn, small and hard and plain, could I imagine oak trees? Or by listening to the rain, could I conceive of oceans? Or could I understand the desert if my hand but held a single grain of sand? So never let me think that what I chance to see, this face, this form, these thoughts, that this is all of me, for it's just as ancient oaks and seas that know no shore, to me, to you, to us, there also is more, yet more. So I would like us to think in terms of being, as we go into our meditation, we are spiritual and we are becoming aware. As we become aware, we're able to express it as the spiritual beings that we are. I invite you to, along with me, go to that place where we can experience within us what we know to be true about us, and allow that spirit to infuse the words, to invite the divine presence of joy and love and all that we know we are as spiritual beings. Allow that to be a part of what we are aware of in this moment. In this moment, we know that we are living in a world that is a world of who we are as spiritual beings. That any time when we begin to feel, we can stop and hold a place for not knowing what is next, but knowing that whatever is next, in this moment, we can go back or look back, go back to look back, not back to go back. And know that that spirit of love and joy has been as almost like unseen hands that have brought us to where we are, have brought us to this place where we are becoming more and more aware of the more that we are, individually and collectively. And let's, in this knowing, that spirit will infuse these words that we have spoken. Let's take a time of silence. We'll allow that to just enter that place where we have a knowing, an awareness, and a time of silence. And as we begin to come out of this holy place, let us remember our world is coming to an individual and collective awareness of who we are, spiritual beings having a human experience. And so it is. Amen.
I am so blessed and refreshed and grateful for your message, Reverend EJ. I can't tell you how much I needed and have been nourished by everything you shared. I especially made note of the reminder that the news is the news because it's news. Thank you for that. I'm going to put just 3 lines of this song into the chat. They're very simple lines, so listen for them, and when I begin to sing them, why don't you sing them with me? Trouble above, trouble below, trouble ahead of me. What do you know? Wake up in the morning. What do I find? Trouble is everywhere, but ain't none on my mind. 'Cause I joy like a fountain. I know I'm gonna be alright, 'cause I've got rhythm and harmony ringing in me. Love is free, peace is free, joy is free, free, free. Is there strife in the world? Is there strife in the home? Are you feeling a little lost? Sometimes feeling alone, waking up at midnight. Do you remember your dream? Riding a raft on a cool, gentle stream. 'Cause you could have peace like a river, love through the night. You can have joy like a fountain. I hear you can be alright, 'cause you've got rhythm and harmony ringing in you. Love is true, peace is true, joy is true, true, true. Whatever way you're looking, there is something there to see. Is life a paradise or prison? Tell me, what do you believe? You can have peace like a river. We got love in our souls. We can have joy like a fountain, guiding everywhere we go. Just let our hearts beat the rhythm. Let the anthem we sing be. Love is free, peace is free, joy is free, free, free. One more time, let's sing that. Love is free, peace is free, joy is free, free, free.
Let's finish up with another very spiritual lady. We've heard from, well, including Joan, 3 already. And this is Marianne Williamson. I do some of her prayers in the Illuminated Prayers book before. I think this one's lovely and very positive as well. So please join me in a closing prayer. Dear God, as we face a new week ahead, may the diamond center of my love shine forth to magnify your light. May my joy not be hidden from me or from others. May you come forth in who I am, that I am. Amen. And we say it is so.
We are so blessed here at Unity Center DC for extraordinary speakers, talented musicians who share with us each week their God gift, their message, their inspiration. And for us as recipients, I'd like you to take this moment and be grateful. If you want to express your gratitude by giving a gift to Unity Center DC, it's possible. We'll put up on the screen the options, but you can give online, you can mail a cash or a check to the address you'll see on the screen, so that we can continue this ministry, which has blessed us all. Thank you.